Okay. Yeah. Let's get started. Hi. Welcome to MEC. I hope you're all having a great time here and having great sessions. I'm going to thank you, first of all, for coming for my session. I know there's a bunch of other sessions you could attend. And I'm going to do my best to make this session useful to you. And I hope some of the information you get here will be valuable for you and your business. Before I introduce myself, how many of you have know about apps for Office? It was an Exchange 2013, Office 2013. Oh, you know about it? Okay, good. Okay. So I will cover the basics then. How many of you have worked with Exchange Web Services, built apps that talk against our web services in Exchange? Okay, you have. Okay, good. Okay. So thanks. That's just to kind of tune on how much details I can go, and I'll try to cover as much basics. As any of you attended the sessions before this, Apps Evolved? Outlook for Apps for Outlook Evolved? Okay, you have. Okay. So there'll be some material here that'll be covered here, but lots of new stuff too, lots of new demos. So thank you. Just wanted to get some context there. So I wanted to first talk about what this talk is about. There are two problems, and therefore two business opportunities, two areas that I want to talk about in this presentation. The first one is many of us spend a lot of time in Outlook and Office today, particularly Outlook, but we find ourselves context switching to other applications to get work done. This is the norm now. But if you think about it, it's eating away at your users' productivity. So an idea that I want to throw out there is, what if you could take these applications and bring it to Office? So users could get even these other miscellaneous tasks they want to get done, get it right done in Office. And this is what we'll explore. The second problem is with bring your own device. More and more organizations are adopting that. Business applications are now being developed as mobile and web solutions because users are on the road. You can't assume them to be in a PC on their corporate network, and they need to get their work done. Your business applications such as your expense reports or other things. But then there's still a problem because some of them don't integrate very well with Office 365 or with Exchange. So you find users constantly switching back to Outlook or back to Mail or Calendar to track things there. Let me put a reminder in my calendar because I just approved a workflow. I just want to track this expense report. So that's also a bunch of switching there. And so another idea I want to propose is, what if you could bring Office to your apps? So even if your users are using your business applications, their Office data is within reach. So we'll explore both these ideas. We'll go into both these areas in a little more detail. I'll try to show you how you can build this app, how you can deploy it, and how you can manage it. So my name is Pratish Abraham. I am a program manager with Exchange team, and I want to talk about how you could use these apps and get better, a more improved productivity for your users. So Office 365, our platform, that broadly contains two areas. The first one is what I talked about, which is the apps for Office. If you look at it, we build a programming model where you can bring your application right inside Office, whether it's Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Access. It's the same model. It's highly contextual because when your app runs side by side with the mail item that you're viewing, it isn't running in context of that mail item. So it's highly contextual for your user. And what is an app? An app for Office? It is a web page that you host in Office, right? So we just expose an endpoint, and it's bringing your applications, your service into Office and running there in a highly contextual, engaging way for the user. And I'll show some demos there. The second one is what we call our robust Office 365 APIs that we expose to our developers. What we've really done in a nutshell is we've taken your Office data, your mail, your calendar, your documents, and exposed them as REST web services, basically a bunch of REST APIs that can be consumed by your mobile applications, your business applications, and getting access to that Office data. So that Office data roams with that user, no matter what device he's using. So I'll talk about that in a minute. So the first thing I want to kind of deep dive is in the first area, apps for Office. So I'm going to switch to a demo first. So first demo is, this is an application that actually we built. It's called the Suggested Meetings app. You can see that somebody sent me an email and asked me, hey, I would like to meet up with you at 10 a.m. on April 2nd. Now, the way how this app activated was because there was a meeting suggestion in the body of the email. So this app contextually activated based on this entity. We support a whole set of entities. In this case, this meeting suggestion entity is something our ad platform natively understands. We've trained our Office 365 servers and Exchange with large amounts of data, so it understands natural language recognition. So in this case, somebody's asked me, can you meet me at 10 a.m.? That was picked up by the app platform. As a developer, you didn't have to write code to parse this email and do this natural language recognition yourself. All you have to do is register your app and said, activate me whenever someone suggests a meeting in that email. So in this case, I can click on this app, and this is the app for Office. In this case, we call it app for Outlook because it's running in the context of Outlook. And for this item, and it's picked up naturally. It's highlighted the entity, and it's picked up the right time that somebody wants to meet me at 10 a.m. And in one click, I can schedule a meeting with that person. So again, you've reduced the number of clicks, and you don't have to go back and forth, and you can, if there's a meeting suggestion, you can really act on it. The second thing I want to show you is an actual internal line of business application. Could you bring that to Office? And I think that the answer is yes, and I want to show you that. So I wanted to set some context before I show it. This is Outlook. And we engineers at Microsoft, we work on a queue of bugs, right? We have to always fix bugs in our product. So there's this application that we always are context switching to called Product Studio, because that application queries our database and gives you the latest bugs that are assigned to you, as well as the latest updated information on it. And this idea came to us, we should just build that as an app for Office. And therefore, there's less context switching for our developers and engineers to go back and forth to this Product Studio application. So there's two things I want to show you. One is this app for Office, and this is a recent improvement we made, is now works when you're composing an email or replying to an email or forwarding an email. You see the app for Office button here. And these are the apps that I've installed for myself. And this is the Product Studio application. Now, what do we do here? This is an application that's running on our backends in Microsoft. And it just authenticated me because it knows it's running as me and my Microsoft credentials using integrated auth. And then it does further authorization in its own backend to find out what database I have access to, and that's its own logic. But then it queries the database and says, what are the bugs that are assigned to me, or what are the bugs that were resolved by me, that were fixed by me? In this case, I'm pretty good at my bugs, and so I can right now look at these bugs in a nutshell and give status to somebody. So this scenario is pretty common because people always are asking you for status of bugs, and you're going to report back to your manager, yep, these are the things I fixed last week. Again, you can, as a lead or even as an IC, you can easily find, individual contributor, you can easily find the list of bugs here. And when I clicked on it, note what it did. It added the content of the bug into my email, and it also put the people involved in the bug, the people who filed the bug, the support people involved, it goes through all of that and puts that in the email for you. It saved me a lot of time. What I would have to do if I didn't have this application is I would have to open up Product Studio, which is a different application, find these bugs. I have to run the query myself. And most of the times I have saved queries. And then get all the information, find all the people, because I need to give status to these people. What's the latest status on this bug? I have to travel through that data, find all the right people involved, and put them in the to line of my email, and then do that. So our engineers use it, and they find this pretty productive. I wanted to show you, this also works when you read an email. So when somebody asks me, hey, what is the status of this bug? The same application works in read mode. So I'm reading an email, and the reason it activated, again, these are very contextual activation. This Product Studio app would not show up if there was no bug listed in that email. So how did that activation work? It worked because there was a regular expression detected in that email where we built that regular expression. As a developer, you can do the same. And says if there's a bug number there, and if it's got Office in there, okay, this guy is probably wanting to look up a bug. So I open up Product Studio, excuse me, and it's querying for the Product Studio for that bug. And the platform automatically highlights that entity. So the user knows that, it's trying to probably interact with that. And in one click, again, I saved a bunch of clicks opening up that bug in Product Studio, and I can reply back to this email and give all the information that I need. This could be useful for you. I mean, if you're a law firm, an engineering firm, a medical clinic, you may have your own case, claim IDs, and your own custom applications. All you need is a web endpoint, and create an app that points to that web endpoint, and you can get authenticated using cookies or integrated auth, and I'll show you some other means of doing it. And bring your line of business applications into Office. If they are high repetitive actions, then why not let them do this task right inside Office? The next thing I wanted to demo is DocuSign. Some of you may have seen this earlier. So DocuSign is a great example. It is an app that's available in the Office Store Marketplace. Yes, we have a marketplace. So how do you compare this to the old add-in model? I wanted to set that context. In the old add-in models, every developer built their own add-ins, and that was code that you had to ship out to each end user's computer, right? That's how that add-in worked. With this model, your app is in the cloud. Basically, like I said, it's hosted. It's a web page that you host, and Office just picks it up and loads it. So you can really update your code whenever you want because it's running on your servers. DocuSign, and the other point is, your end users can find productivity apps in our marketplace that other ISVs have built and may find it useful. So in this case, I want to give you an example of this application called DocuSign. I don't know how many of you have heard of it. You can actually electronically sign documents. So if you're refinancing your home, you're buying a new home, you're going to get a flurry of documents back and forth from your realtor and from your mortgage consultant. And what I want to show you is they built this app. I installed this app just from the marketplace. And I could log in. I could set up my own account with DocuSign and log in right here in this iframe, right? So I'm in Outlook. Or because this application has integrated with Azure Active Directory, I can single sign on with my organizational account. Now, it would not even have prompted me because it was single signed on me. I signed out before this. But you can see I didn't need to create another account. So I didn't have friction. DocuSign didn't force their users to set up another account to do it. You had your own organizational account that you used to log into Office 365. That same account works. And that's because that login is supported through Azure Active Directory. Outlook, SharePoint, Exchange SharePoint, they're all actually applications of Azure Active Directory. That's how you can single sign on to any of these properties using the same password. And you'll just get single signed on if there's a cookie in your browser. So all DocuSign did is they registered as an application with Azure Active Directory, and they got the same single sign-on experience using the same account, same credential that I used to log into Outlook or log into SharePoint. Does that make sense? So in this case, I can sign. So basically, it has access. We have APIs to grab the attachment from your mail item, and it picked it up there. And then what it does is it loads its own form and controls. So here, this is just a Mech campaign document. Excuse me. I can put my signature right here. There's a couple other things I could put. I could put my initials if I want, and click Finish. What this does is DocuSign takes the signed copy of the document, uploads it to their own cloud, and it's a link that you can share with anyone else, your realtor, your mortgage consultant who wants to sign documents. Or when it finishes it, you can download it yourself, or you could compose a reply right here within Outlook. And you get a link to that document. So you can reply back to that person and say, hey, here's my signed attached document. You can also save it to OneDrive for Business. They were able to plug into all these endpoints because, again, they were an application registered with Azure Active Directory. So if I click Save here, it just would go and take that signed document and save it to my OneDrive for Business. So making it available for me in the cloud. So actually, this is my over version of that. I will just, if I go to OneDrive, DocuSign actually creates a folder for me. And you can see that document was just came in a few seconds ago. So yeah, highly contextual, very productive. This saved me a bunch of work because usually I get these documents. What do? We print it out, we sign it, and then we scan or fax it back, right? So, and there are other solutions out there who's now trying to move signing to the cloud. But what we like with them is they've integrated right inside Office, right? And you never left Office. You just you just signed it right there. You signed in with your own account, your Office 365 account, and you got in. The other reason why I like DocuSign as an application is they've also integrated in Word. Remember, the app for Office model applies to all the Office clients, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Access, and Outlook. Of course, the APIs are slightly different because one deals with mail, but the model is the same. It's basically hosting a web page in that Office client, and it's your page. So in this case, this is a typical NDA kind of document, just a pseudo document, but that we work with vendors all the time. Before we can work on projects together, we want to, this product common practice where you want to exchange an NDA document and you need the vendor to sign it. In this case, DocuSign, as again, I've already installed this app and I can pick it up from my recently used app. DocuSign runs as a task pane. We call this a task pane app because it runs side by side as a task pane next to the document. And again, I can go to DocuSign without asking me to sign in. It, in fact, picked me up already that I'm me, Pratish. And I can sign my document and click Finish. And I get the same integration points where I can say, hey, I can check my document status in DocuSign, or I can save it to OneDrive and so forth. This is the DocuSign location in the cloud, so you can always share this link to other people, or they will even email you the signed document. Okay. The last, I wanted to give you one more flavor of apps for Office. Let's look at Excel. So here I have a simple table. It's got state as a column, all the states, and assuming I'm a small business and I've got, or a big business, and I've got my revenue from each of the state, I want to do some modeling on it. I want to understand, hey, where's my sales coming from, and what scenarios or factors affect my sales. So again, you can use apps for Office. Out of the box, there are some apps, visualization apps. So in this case, I can click here, and these visualization apps takes your data and show you different visual pivots of that data. In this case, excuse me, I have to select my data. So just pick these rows. And I tell this app. So this app is called a content app. It's the same apps for Office, but it's just different ways. One is task pane, one is right here. It's a content app because it can show you visualization. So in this case, it showed me this nice graph where it's showing me the state and the money, the sales that came out of that state. And it gives you all these kind of little icons, like maybe people is not the right way to kind of represent this. Money is. So I could just change that to that, and you can kind of get a sense of the scale of revenue you make out of this. I want to show you one more thing. There's a service out there called Wolfram Alpha. They got consensus data from many states in the United States, and they can give you all kinds of statistics about population and so forth. It's a service out there. You don't have to, other than calling their service, you don't write any code. You can even do a natural language query, like, hey, what's the young adult population in Kansas? And it can return it back, and they will have the databases. So what I wanted to do, again, as a business owner, is I wanted to say, hey, I wanted to check, because my product is probably suitable for younger people. I wanted to check with the service. And all I had to do is, one of my peer test teams built this app. They just built this TaskPane app, and all it did was call that web service at Wolfram Alpha and build this little UI. So the first thing I need to do is select a table. And then I can name my young adult population. And then I have to tell the web service that I'm calling, this third-party service called Wolfram. Here's what I'm looking for, this natural language query, and look up my state. And for each state, see if you can pull up the young adult population and fill it in. So it'll take a little while maybe, but there you go. It's starting to fill all the number of users in each state right there. And I didn't have to do much. I just brought it right into Excel. So any of my salespeople who want to do this could do it. And actually, my test team actually has another app that will actually cleanly format this for you and convert it to users. There's a session in the Channel 9 SharePoint conference where a lot of good demos in what you could do with Excel and PowerPoint and Word. They all run on the same model, apps for Office. Okay. Let me get back to my PowerPoint. So one thing, where any of those Outlook apps that I showed you, Meeting Suggestion, Product Studio, that internal line of business application that we use, DocuSign, you write the app once, you write the code once, and it works across multiple Outlook clients. So it works on the desktop Outlook client, the client that you guys probably use a lot. It works on Outlook Web App, the browser client. And we also have the apps, Outlook over apps for Android and for iPhone and the iPad. And because it's a browser, you can pretty much run it on any device you want. And all of these, the scaling factors of your page is taken care of. You get to control just how big you want it to look like in those iframes there. So we're glad we like that approach, because we heard from our vendors and developers that that's pretty efficient. I didn't have to change much of my logic. Okay, so I want to talk about a little bit of the design of app for Office, or in this case, app for Outlook. Like I said, an app for Outlook is basically a web page. It's your page, or the developer's page, that he hosts or he or she hosts on their server. It's based on normal web standards. If you build web applications, this is exactly the same. You can use JavaScript and HTML, and the way how you build that web application is up to you. You can use your favorite ASP or PHP. In the end, it's just an HTML page in JavaScript that you host. And then you tell, when you install that, and I'm going to cover that in the next slides, as an administrator, as an end user, you tell Exchange, hey, this is the manifest. There's a thing called a manifest. It's an XML file, and I'll show it to you in a little bit, that describes the app. It tells, hey, Outlook, whenever you load this page, this HTML page, this web page, from this location, right? And that could be www.contoso.com, some HTML page. And then your logic runs right inside the context of Outlook. Other things that this manifest describes is the permissions. What permissions does it need? And I'll talk about that in a minute. And that's an example of how it runs. So in that case, we have another entity, like I talked about, a meeting suggestion entity. That screenshot is showing you an address entity. Again, our platform natively understands these. If there's an address mentioned in the email, you as an app developer could write an app that activates based on the presence of an address entity. In this case, we have a Bing Maps application, and it highlighted, the yellow highlight is the address, and it ran it because of that. And you can get directions easily inside Outlook without leaving Outlook. So how does that app interface with the body of the mail or the subject or the tool or CC line of that email? We have JavaScript APIs. So you just use this. We have a library, a bunch of APIs where you can interact with these fields. You have read and write permissions depending on what permissions you asked for in that manifest. You can read. You can start with just read, or if you want to actually manipulate the subject or add attachments, you can go ahead and do that. So what else did we cover? And we kind of covered that in the previous demos. It's highly contextual. You get the choice of having the app work in messages or meeting appointments. It can activate on regular expressions. Like you remember in the Product Studio, it just activated on a regular expression. We understand entities. There's a bunch of entities we support. Phone numbers, addresses, meeting suggestions. Even a task suggestion, we understand that. Hey, can you do this? We can highlight that and provide that to the app and ask, do you want to activate based on this? If they've registered for it, they'll get called. You can activate based on the presence of an attachment. Authentication. So I kind of covered this. It's pretty much standard auth. Integrated auth works well. Cookies will work well. And we also provide, optionally, you can use an identity token that's issued by Office 365 or Exchange, your on-premise Exchange, that you could use to associate it with some other third-party login that you have that's probably not compatible with integrated auth or Office 365. And you can make that association, yep, this is a signed token, so I know this person is who he is, and it's issued by Exchange. It is secure. We designed this to protect the user's experience in Office or in Outlook. And what I mean by that is that application, the Bing Maps, runs in a runtime environment that is separate from the Office application. It's sandboxed. In OVA, it's a separate iframe. In Outlook, it's running as a separate out-of-proc event. And we watch the usage. The platform watches the usage of the application, so there's limits on how much the application can consume, memory or how long it's running. If it runs for too long, we'll just stop it. We'll even ask the user to disable it. And the reason why we do this is we want to protect the user's experience. We don't want folks to write any inefficient apps that's degrading the user's experience. So that's just an assurance that we want to give to our customers. So now I want to talk about how you can manage these apps, starting with installing them. So remember, I said we have a marketplace. And in OVA, I can go to this thing called Manage Apps. And this will show me all the list of apps. I don't know if I clicked it. OK, just taking a while. This will show me the list of installed apps that I installed for myself, or what my organization or what my admin has installed for me for the entire organization. So you can see I have my own custom app here. I have DocuSign that got installed by my admin, and it's available for my entire organization. And I have a bunch of other apps that came default. We ship default apps out of the box in Exchange. So you can go and try it. If you have Exchange 2013, these are apps that you could just go and try. So I could just go to click here, find more apps at the Office store, and I can find other interesting apps like DocuSign that could be useful or productive for me. So again, we left that to end users, and if they wanted to go find and install these apps. What I want to demo to you today is how an admin could do it. So right now I'm logged in as the context of an end user. If I log in as an administrator, this is my administrator dashboard. Here's where I create recipients, I manage permissions. In organization, I click on apps. Similar view, except now I'm running in the context of an admin, so I can do more things. So in this case, I could say, I want to go to the store. So all I did was find more apps at the store. Other things I wanted to show is you can add from the Office store, which is the link that I just clicked on. You can add from a URL, and this is your own web location so if you built your own line of business application, this is not for other people to consume, this is just for your own internal business application. You can say, hey, install this app from this web location, this URL, or install this from this file share. And that's that XML manifest file that I talked about, which described everything about your app, where to load me from, what are the permissions I need. That's what it's looking for. So yeah, you can deploy apps by simply putting them on a file share. In this case, I'm interested in LinkedIn. LinkedIn is an app that's the LinkedIn product team developed for apps for Office. In this case, there are a couple of things you can watch for. We're very transparent. We ask all our third-party ISVs and developers who publish apps in the marketplace that's available for anyone to use or install, that they have to provide their privacy statements and their terms and conditions. And you as a user or as an admin, when you click on add, it actually goes and tries to install this application on your mailbox. And you get this dialog even before it goes and installs it, because you get to read, you get to see, oh, this is the application, here's the publisher, what permission does this app want? Oh, it wants only read items, so it just wants to read the items in your mail. In LinkedIn's case, it tries to read everyone in the from line and to and CC line, so it can show you a LinkedIn profile of these people right inside Outlook without leaving it. And I'll demo that in a second. So yeah, just like any application out there, we ask our developers to be very transparent, and we force it. This is something that we host and show all the permissions so that the user can consent to. So what I wanted to show you was when this finishes installing, hopefully very soon. OK, so you add an app for Outlook. I can go back here. Oh, I don't even have to refresh. LinkedIn is right here. And by default, it's available for everyone in my org. Remember, I was running under the context of an admin. So within one click, I made this app available for my org, but it's still disabled by default. which means it's not going to run for any of your users. I can change that by clicking Edit. And there are 3 options here. You can say, I want to make this optional and enable by default. What that means is, once I do this, LinkedIn will activate for all the emails that you get, any of your end users get, and they can see the LinkedIn information. But it's optional. If some users don't like it, they could go and disable it. Or I could say optional and disable by default, which means, hey, it's not even going to be enabled at all by default. If you as an end user have heard about LinkedIn and you really want it, I've made it available for your organization. You as an end user can individually go and enable it for yourself. Or I can say it's mandatory. It's enabled and mandatory. That means it'll run for all the users in your organization, and they can't go and disable it. Yeah. So the first 2 ones, the reason why it's optional is end users can, even if you've installed it by default, enabled it by default, they can go and flip it back to disabled if they want. The last one just makes it mandatory. So if this is like a really important line of business application, then you can just make it mandatory because it's something that all users use. Let me just make this mandatory for now. So I go back into my Outlook. Oh, this is DocuSign emailing me with a PDF attachment of the signed document, which I could also forward on. But now you see, if I click on Mail, LinkedIn activates. And this one's got a very simple activation. It just says, activate me on all the mails, because they all have a from and to line. And LinkedIn just logged me in, and I can find out who these people are in this, because I can see myself and view the LinkedIn profile information of these people right inside Outlook. LinkedIn used that optional identity token that I talked about, because LinkedIn, of course, is a separate third-party service running in the cloud. It doesn't understand, your integrated auth credential, your Windows credential. So all it did is, the first time I ran this app, it's just remembering me right now, but it's associated me and my LinkedIn account together because there's that identity token. Yes? Per app. Per app, you can tune the size, the width, and the height of that. Yeah.
That particular app?
Yeah.
So, so if you open up an Outlook or if you open up on
over the browser, yeah.
It'll still be that same size?
Yeah. Okay. So I hope that gave you a flavor of deployment. It's pretty easy. In one click, you can deploy an app for your entire organization. And you have all these levers to say whether you want it enabled by default or disabled. Okay, so managing apps in Marketplace. I think we covered the stuff on the left. As an admin, you can install an app, your own internal line of business app, or you can pick one from the Marketplace. We talked about the second point. You can say, hey, the installation is, when you install it, you can say it's required, or it's enabled or disabled by default. Your users can install it. There's a way to actually go and disable it. If you don't want your users installing apps from the Marketplace, you can stop that. In that case, all control is with the admin. You can delegate this ability to other admins or users. In the Marketplace, if you're thinking of writing an app and publishing it in the Marketplace, we do have some guidelines there that we like you to follow. A is we validate it. We have a team that goes and validates every app. It makes sure that it's functional, it loads fast, like I said. It's asking for the right permissions. It has a privacy statement. More importantly, its endpoint is SSL. So it does all that validations. If it really passes that validation, then only your app can be listed in the Marketplace. And one thing I wanted to mention, my colleague mentioned earlier in his talk, is there's commerce ability. So you, as an ISV, could actually publish your app in the Marketplace and list it as a paid app. That means end users have to, purchase that app. So it's a way to make revenue off that, of your innovation. The last point, apps can be disabled on Microsoft anytime. So it's not that they passed that first time validation and now they're in the Marketplace. If we monitor them, and if we hear any support issues about the app, we could pull the app from the Marketplace. We could also kill it globally. It doesn't matter even if it's deployed globally already. Our servers have a list of apps that kind of don't behave badly. So the reason why we do this is because we care about you as a customer and want to make sure the apps are of high quality. And if they degrade or if they're not doing some things right, then we can pull it from the marketplace and we can even disable it. Yes?
The marketplace, how do you handle the hosting side of it? So is that something that Microsoft hosts for you, or is Microsoft provide the hosting for it?
There's you host your own app, of course, sorry. But there is a publishing process which Microsoft hosts where you submit all your code solution and they run it and they validate it. And then they host it on Marketplace for you. You don't have to manage that part.
Okay, so the global side of it, obviously,
That's-
Europe, it's going to be hosted locally in Europe.
That's right. Yeah, the marketplace is around the world. It's opened up in about 18 locations. Yes.
Is the marketplace hosting the manifest or hosting the actual app? I think my understanding is the manifest.
It's a manifest. That's all.
So
Okay,
your
so
app
yeah,
is
your app
still
has actually got your global hosting solution.
Yeah. That's right. That's why I said your app backend, your code is run by you. It's your apps on your servers, and you can get to host it on, whatever service provider, Amazon or Azure, and get cloud. Yeah.
Something with a global solution.
Yeah. Yeah. Good question. I put some of these PowerShell tasks. I'm not going to go through every one of them, but if you use PowerShell, your IT administrators they can again deploy this very easily for the entire organization. They can do it for a select set of users. So you can have the granularity. You don't have to install an app for everybody in your organization. You can just say, hey, this is only for my finance team. So that's the set app dash organization app command where you can just say, I want it installed only for these 3 users or these 100 users. Permissions. So we have basically 4 levels of permissions. We've restricted. This is pretty much the lowest permission. It has only read access, and you can access only certain entities, such as phone and address. Read item can do a lot more. We can run regular expressions. If you ask for that, we will activate you if your regular expression matches the part of the email. And it can, of course, read all the data from that item. Again, just that one item that app was activated with. And read-write item, again, gives you the read-write privileges for that one item that your app contextually activated for. The last one is a more powerful permission, and only administrators have the rights to go and install that. And that says you can set properties on not just that item, you can set it on the folder as well as other items, and you can even send mail. Okay, so I want to talk now about the second part of the platform, about our REST services. Like I said, we've exposed Office data as a set of REST services that can be consumed by your mobile apps, your business apps. Let's talk about that. This perhaps the most significant announcement I want to make is that we have OAuth support now. What this means is this is the standard OAuth flow where your credentials is handled by Azure Active Directory, your authentication is handled by Azure Active Directory through a web flow. And you don't have to deal with basic auth. That means you as an application developer doesn't have to deal with the user's credentials, securely save them, and manage them. You can do this by, you get this OAuth capability by integrating with our libraries, or you can do this yourself too, but there's OAuth support to access Office 365 data, whether it's mail, calendar, SharePoint, documents, so forth. It works the same way as you sign in to Office 365. So, of course, the same credentials, same sign-in flow, because it's a web-based flow. So today, there's a feature in Office 365 that says, hey, you can go turn on two-factor auth, and some of you may want to consider that. We didn't have to change anything for our apps model because it's a web flow, so if you enable two-factor auth, it just works for whenever you want to authenticate to the app. Like that DocuSign app, if you enable two-factor auth, then you would get a two-factor dialog if you want to authenticate. Streamlined consent flow. So we have 2 consent flows, one for the user, one for the administrator. And it's very streamlined. So I wanted to show you what that was like. So this is, again, a sign-in dialog. So imagine you were trying to log into DocuSign. You get a standard dialog like this. If you were not authenticated. If most likely you're already authenticated, you already logged into OVA or SharePoint, so this would just be a single sign-on all the way. But if this is the first time you install an app, then you will get a consent dialog. And that's that. Which is, if I'm an end user, and this is an end user application, I get the permissions. Again, every application that registered in Azure Active Directory, like that DocuSign app, they have to declare what permissions do I want. So it says, in that case, you can, it's kind of, text is kind of light, very small there, but it reads, I need permissions to read your contacts, read your calendar, read your mail, and read your items in your site collections, your OneDrive documents collections, and so forth. And so me as an end user, when I see this consent, if I hit OK, I'm giving consent to this application to get my data. Very standard workflow, similar to what you see in your devices, your iPhones and Androids. But we also offer this to admins. So if you as a developer have built an app that you actually want admins to manage and deploy, and it actually needs admins' consent, a user consent is not sufficient because it's probably asking for more permissions, so it needs admin oversight. Then the consent flow looks very similar, except there's an extra dialog, there's an extra set of text there, which I closed in a rectangle. It says, if you agree, this application can access all your users' resources. And then each of them don't have to individually consent, because you as an administrator have already consented on behalf of your organization. So just a little difference. It all depends whether you're building organization apps, admin apps, or simple end-user facing apps. The other thing we announced recently, just a month ago, was our REST APIs, which I talked about. So we exposed mail, calendar, contact REST APIs that are really well designed for mobile and web applications. They're very lightweight. They use JSON. They're all based on web standards, OAuth, and then the payload is JSON. So pretty much the most common format for mobile applications today, data format. We have granular permissions, like you saw. We have read and write on a calendar, mail, contact basis. And we will be adding more. And we also have files. So you can also work with your documents right straight away in OneDrive or your SharePoint. So what are the scenarios? So you could write a mobile application. You could write your own line of business application. Assume, let's say it's an expense report application, and your users on the road, it's something they frequently have to deal with. They can't assume they're carrying their PC around or laptop around. They can easily, and if this is a high repetition activity, then mobile is a great way for them to streamline this scenario, make it very optimal where they can submit expenses or approve expenses. But why Office 365? Because sometimes you want integration with Office 365. You want to put a reminder on that person's calendar. Hey, your expenses are due. You should file it within 30 days. Some of us have policies like that. You can't let it linger for a long time. You can also build it as a web application. And this also can be mobile friendly because it'll just run on any device, authenticate, and you're on. The last thing I want to show you is you can also build an app for Office. And when you build an app for Office, because an app for Office is basically a web page that you host, you could reuse your existing web application and host it as an app for Office. So what I'm showing you is use both approaches if you want. If you want your scenario to be available in multiple places, one inside Office, one outside Office. Okay, so now I want to switch to a demo. Okay, so this is a web application I have, and I'm going to talk about tooling in a minute. And the first thing I wanted to show you is it's a pretty simple web application, and I actually built this easily in in Visual Studio. Right now it's running in Visual Studio, so it's pretending my laptop is the web server, and it's just running right there, and it's a very simple application. It accesses my Exchange, and I can see all my calendar items. It's trying to see if it just went to see if I'm authenticated. It found, yeah, I already am authenticated, so it didn't have to prompt me. I've already, because this is a application I consented before, it didn't show me the consent dialog. But this web application is showing my calendar items right there. So it just showed how seamlessly it went and showing my calendar for the day. I can also go and look at mail. And I can also look at contacts. Now, when I built this application, I didn't ask for contacts. So if I try to go request contacts, I should get an access denied, because that is not a permission that I had asked for. And I can go look into OneDrive. So this is my web application. But then what I did was, in Visual Studio, there's a way to convert an existing web application. So you can use the existing web application. You don't have to build one from scratch, but make it into an app for Office. So it shows up contextually in Outlook or in Over. I don't want to go too much into the code here, but I want to give you a glance of it so that you kind of appreciate what it's about. So this is that manifest file. And this is my Office application. The one on top is my web application. And my manifest file basically tells me a couple of things. It tells me where this app for Office should show up. So it's telling me here that it should show up in both messages and appointments, in both Compose when I'm sending a new mail or when I'm reading an email. So it also tells you about the permissions. It needs read and edit. And this is the source location. So this is where the app for Office, where it says, hey, what's the page I need to load? In this case, it's pointing a remote app URL because it's this Visual Studio application is running on my machine here. It's localhost. These app domains are basically what you need to tell your application that, hey, my app loads these other domains, login.microsoftonline.com, because that's how authentication happens. So to prevent cross-site same origin policy, you don't want to violate that, so you make this declaration, and then your application will allow to go to these pages and get single sign-on and authenticated. So I just want to talk about that manifest. So now let me tell you what this app does. So yeah, I showed you a web application that's standalone by itself, and what I've done is I hit F5 and just deployed this application, the same expense application, which is appears as a web app over here. I installed it as an app for Outlook. So now it's running here. So when I click over here, you can see it's showing me the same pages as my web app. I got my web application hosted in my app for Office, in my app for Outlook. So in this scenario, I have this approvals button, and I can click on Exchange. I can see my mail, calendar, or OneDrive. So exact same thing. So I modeled this application, very simple demo. I modeled it using an expense report scenario. So I have this approve button. I'm a manager, and my employees go out and travel, conferences like these, and they want to submit expense reports, right? And I just want to seamlessly approve it. I don't want to leave Outlook and over. I'm probably at home. I don't want to VPN in, or I'm probably on the go, in which case I have an over app on the device, and I just want to approve it right inside Outlook. So keep that in mind. I want to show you something now. Sorry. Apologies. I think I hit my mic. I will. Yeah, asking for it. Okay. So this is my expense application. It's on my Android. I built it as an Android app. And what it's doing is it's using those REST APIs. Remember I said we expose all your mail, calendar, documents as APIs that can be consumed by mobile applications or web applications. All I did is I hooked it up to call these REST APIs to say, hey, in this model, very simplistic model of an expense application, it's going through my draft mail, because that's where I started my expense template. This is the reason, my justification, why I'm traveling and so forth. And it also understands who my approvers are. So it's able to pick up those draft expense templates. It hasn't submitted it yet, so I'm going to demo that to you. But the thing I wanted to show is it also uses our Azure Active Directory API to find out who your manager is, because most likely that's your approver. But if it's someone else also, you can have your own logic and use the Azure Active Directory people APIs to kind of browse through it and pick the people. So here you go, and as an application, it's already understood what my needs and who my approver is and where I have my templates. In this case, I hooked it up and using, of course, my Exchange REST APIs. And I can pick on an existing application, my expense. And this is a note to my, you can add a note to my boss. Hey, I had awesome time and a lot of parties, and hope he doesn't mind expensing it. One of the things I've integrated is you can kind of bookmark it. It's just a poor implementation, but this will get added to your calendar. So, like I said, some of your expenses, you want to, like in Microsoft, you have a 30-day policy by when you should submit your expenses. You don't want it to go further than that. That's just the policy. So this can add a reminder to your calendar. Let me just go to the calendar. and say, hey, yeah, you should finish up your expense submission, expense report submission by then. Hopefully that loads. Maybe I'll do that later. Oh. This is just a test app, that's why. And I also have a backup device. Let's see if that works. Let me try my other device. Okay, I'm just going to try this again. So in this case, I want to take a picture of a receipt because I'm traveling, and this is one of the handiness, that I can use my mobile to take a picture and take a picture of you guys and say, this is my expense receipt. And it did that, and I can hit send. So now if I go back, so what I've done is attached a picture. Oh, I don't know, that maybe this demo didn't work. I don't know if it went through. Just going to use my other app because I think that phone is giving me trouble. That wireless connectivity. Let me see if I can take a picture. Oh, yeah, so that's succeeded. Let me just go back to my... I know what happened. This is a device that I borrowed from my friend recently, and my app doesn't take huge pictures. By default, this is set to the extreme resolution, like 8 gigabyte pictures, and I couldn't handle, my app just didn't handle that kind of file size. But for this device, I did tune the resolution to a more acceptable one, like 2 gigs, and I was able to attach a picture, and I can send it. So, sure enough, I got an email. This is the My Expense thing. My Mac was awesome. A lot of parties, hope you don't mind. And I can click my expense application right here. So I'm the manager now. I just got an email from my report with a receipt. And I can click on it. Sure enough, that's a picture. You guys, looking good. And I can click on Approve right here. And click Approve. Now this should save this. In my implementation, I just saved it to OneDrive. And you can see it actually saved it to OneDrive right here. So 2:24 p.m. Let's just go to OneDrive just to make sure. A few seconds ago, that should be your picture there. So what I showed you is how you can extend your expense application and tie it and connect it with Office and apps for Office, and also bring Office data to your expense application like a mobile application. Because you want to put reminders, you want to send mail, you want access to contacts, you want access to people. There's another application I wanted to show you. So I bet many of you have a solution like this today. This is a SharePoint list collection. And this is a custom solution where in SharePoint you can, basically it's a repository of your documents, but it's got workflows associated to it. In this case, this is a campaign app where marketing people, before they kick off a campaign, they want to make sure they get the approval from their directors and their vice presidents because it requires a bit of funding and approvals. People, what they do usually is they go into SharePoint, and you can see they customize this collection, and you can see a status here called approved, who the approver is, and who the VP approver is. And this is something normal that many people in Office 365 and SharePoint customers do today. They put workflows in SharePoint. What I want to show you is how you could extend this, and again, bring it to your apps for Office, and also bring it to your mobile applications, because that is the bring your own device kind of world today we live in. So the first thing I want to show you is I'm the admin, and I get this email. I'm Arpan, I'm the admin, and I get an email from my marketing boss. I'm sorry, I'm not an admin, I'm an end user. But I get an email from my boss saying that, hey, would you mind kicking off the MEC campaign? So I said, yes, I'm on it. I'm kicking off the marketing campaign. Need approval from my VP and director to get this going ASAP. And this is my Compose app. I'm going to click App for Outlook. Hopefully it works. And what I'm going to show you, once it's finished loading, is there's an application. This app has an issue where, because it's running on this Wi-Fi network, it's not pretty quick enough to load it. But basically, it does load after you retry it. And it doesn't happen again. Hopefully it catches it, but it's just my demo. I can kick off that campaign right inside App for Outlook, or my app for Over. So it's a MEC campaign, kickoff, need radio, TV, print, funding, please approve, ASAP. So in this case, there's a list of approvers, and I picked up these people from my GAL, from my address book. I can pick my VP, I can pick my director. And what this is going to do is basically submit the campaign, what I would have normally done in SharePoint, where I click new item over here. So let's try that. Again, keeping users keeping them mobile and letting them use the applications whether they want. In this case, it's going to submit that request. And the thing I wanted to show you is when it did that, I got an alert on my mobile phone, assuming I'm one of the directors or the VPs, because it kicked off this campaign, and it's wired to send a Windows Azure mobile notification to the devices registered with the users there. So in this case, because I picked those users, it sent a notification to their mobile devices, and this you're able to go into the app and find my pending campaign. This is the MEC campaign kickoff that you just saw. And let's assume I'm the director, and I can just hit approve there. So that's on my Windows phone that I just integrated straight into my mobile app, brought Office there. So the other one I wanted to show you, let's see which way this works. I got a notification from my Android tablet too. And the same, it hasn't refreshed yet. You can see the MEC campaign kickoff. And I can hit approve. And now both people have approved. My director has approved, my VP has approved. And if I go back into SharePoint and hit F5, there you see MEC campaign kickoff. It's a new thing, and it's been approved by both people. You know, today sorry, I forgot to put. I just hit F5 on my SharePoint site, and that item that I kicked off. So I kicked off the campaign in Outlook. I never started in SharePoint. I started in Outlook, and I completed my workflow with my mobile applications. The users associated with that campaign just approved it using their Windows phone and their Android phone. Or they could have gone here to SharePoint site, but this is not friendly on your device, navigating SharePoint and going through the collection and approving it. So this is a great example of how I've extended an existing business solution that is built on SharePoint, but took it to your mobile phone and took it to your Outlook. I wanted to Visual Studio. Out of the box, Visual Studio can build these web apps for you. But you can use your own existing web applications. You can take your existing web application, use Visual Studio, but you don't have to. It just does it very conveniently for you, and convert it to connect it to Office using your Office 365 REST APIs, or convert it to make it an app for Office, or do both. It's just Visual Studio does a great job just handling all those steps for you. Other things that Visual Studio does is when I created my application, that expense application, it went and registered an AAD for me. Out of the box, it gave me working samples. When I clicked on Exchange, where it showed me the top 5 items in my calendar, the top 5 items in my mail, that was just out of the box code that Visual Studio generated for me. And if I have time, I'll demo that too. You can leverage your existing applications. So if you already have web applications, like I said, you can use Visual Studio to connect it up with Office using Office 365, using our REST APIs. We have client libraries. So to do OAuth, don't write code on your own. I highly recommend using these libraries because it handles all the token refreshes, the caching for you, and all that logic. And that's that. I highly recommend using that. It's very easy. And then you have an Android SDK that's available for the Exchange API itself. The code that when I wrote this demo, I just used direct REST APIs. But if you really want a more friendly SDK that for Android, and we will be investing more in the future, then there is one at GitHub that you could download and use. By the way, these applications, I'm going to put all this up in Yammer, so you can download the code, you can send it to your developers, or if you're a developer yourself, you can play with it and try it out. So I wanted to talk about management. Just give me a second. So, it's just asking me to sign in again. My applications, the DocuSign application, this expense application that I just built, why was it able to get my calendar data, my mail data? Or why was this mobile applications that I showed you? It was all because of OAuth, and it single signed on me in using my organizational account, my Office 365 account. And that's all these applications are registered and managed in Azure Directory. Just like Exchange and SharePoint itself are applications registered and managed in Azure Active Directory. So this is my, with my Azure subscription, I can manage all these tenants, but I just wanted to show you a bunch of things. So if you click on my tenant, the name of my tenant was, Pret7e, and I can click on Applications tab, and I can see all the applications associated with my tenant that was registered in AAD for me. So in this case, the DocuSign app that I had installed, that you saw in Outlook earlier on in the demo, I can manage this application. I can click on Manage Access and revoke it. So I can remove access, and all my users in my organization can no longer access DocuSign. Now, I cannot go, this is not my app, this is DocuSign's app. But if it was my own app, like the expense app that I created, that I just showed you, there's a lot more properties that I could see. Like this is hosted off my Visual Studio box. It's my local machine, so that's my single sign-on URL. But I can see all the permissions. But this is for any app. Even the DocuSign app, I can look at what permissions it has. But because this is an app that I own and it's registered, it's my internal application. It's associated with my tenant, my Office 365 tenant. I can configure it. It's already pre-configured. Like I said, Visual Studio managed all of this for me. I didn't have to go sign up for Azure or whatever. Every Office 365 customer, they get an Azure tenant automatically, an Azure Active Directory tenant. The Azure subscription, the Azure portal is just helping you manage it visually, but you can go and manage these apps through PowerShell task, and you also have the convenience of command line to go do it if you want to automate things and so forth. I'm just showing you the UI. This is my expense application. I can say if it's multi-tenant or not. I don't want to make it multi-tenant because this expense application that makes sense only to my organization, so I've hit no. But if you're an ISV, you could say, hey, here's an application, I'm going to select yes, it's multi-tenant, and any tenant in Office 365 could go, any customer in Office 365 could go use it. This is my client ID, this is called the app principal ID, and this is equivalent to a customer's username and password. This is the application client ID is the equivalent of a username. And these are the keys, so you can manage rollovers because that's how the key is the password. So the username is the client ID and the key is the password. And it expires, but you can set up multiple keys so you have a nice smooth rollover. Yeah. And then, yeah, you can delete this app if you want, in which case it's gone. And these are the permissions that you can see in Exchange. Let me just see. Yeah, sorry, this is the thing where you can see that I've asked for send mail as a user, read and write to the user's mail, all users' mail, and so forth. Yeah, so if I want to just remove access to an application, I just go to Manage Access and remove it. If it's my own application, then I have a lot more things I could do. I can revoke the keys, I could temporarily disable it, or I can even delete it. So admin scenarios. So like I said, you can manage these apps. These apps register in Azure Active Directory. You can manage them using Azure Active Directory portal, or you can use the commandlets. You can use the task. And again, when you're an Office 365 customer, you already have an Azure Active Directory tenant. When you go to the portal, it does ask you to sign up with your credit card as a trial, but you don't need a new tenant or anything like that. That subscription is just so that you can open up that portal UI that I just showed you and manage it there. And we're trying to relax some of the constraints there because you have all of this. As an Office 365 customer, you already have an AAD tenant, an Azure Active Directory tenant, and you can programmatically do everything that I just showed you in the UI. So you really don't need a subscription. So we're trying to fix that friction. You can view any app's permissions, whether it's some third-party app that you consented to, or it's your own apps that you developed in-house. You can manage the keys. Keys are like the password of your application, right? You can have rollovers and manage the keys there, another configuration. You can revoke all access to a web app. So that expense app was a web app, and I can go and just revoke all access to it. Or a DocuSign was a web app too. I could revoke access to it. You can block users completely from consenting to any app, whether it's a mobile app for the Android or whether it's a web app. And what that means is you as an administrator, you're in control. All apps get deployed only through you. So that's an option for some organizations. And coming soon, with our partnership with Azure Active Directory, will be a portal where you can show the list of users and what apps they've consented to. Because right now the portal didn't show that, but they're working on it. So you can exactly see which users consented to what apps. So there's some user scenarios that you could do with managing apps. Device apps are managed by the user. It's like your iPhone app or Android app. If you don't want it, click on it and remove it, uninstall it. And when you do that, it'll stop access, right? It'll no longer get access to the data. If you change your password or reset your password in Office 365, then any mobile apps that you have, they would have to force, and those apps would have to require to get consent again. We did that. For web apps, it's much more smooth. Just behind the scenes, they'll get another access token using their refresh token. If those of you are familiar with OAuth, it's not going to prompt you again just because you changed your password. Those apps will continue to work. For mobile devices, we took the precaution just because you could lose your mobile device and so forth. Changing your password, resetting your password is a good way to re-prompt the user and force them to sign in again to make sure that before that app has access to your data. And coming soon, there'll be an apps portal that lets users view and revoke access to their web apps. So users also could have their own portal where they can see all the apps that they've consented to, and they can go and manage it and revoke access to it. So some of the tasks. Just wanted to put some examples here so you could have it for your reference. You can use that first task is about, as a company, you can disable users from getting apps on their own and consenting to apps on their own, whether it's a device app or a web app. So you can completely firewall it and allow only admins to do it, like I explained. The second one is you can run this get MSOL service principal commandlet. Again, these are tasks that's available to you as an Office 365 customer. You already have this. You just have to fire up the PowerShell and run it. And you can see the app principal IDs. You can run get MSOL service principal by itself, which will show you all the service principals. The service principal is an identity associated with an application. So expense app would show up when you run that commandlet in the output. If you have the client ID, in this case, I know the client ID of my expense app because I created it and registered it myself. If you know that already, then you can just call get MSOL service principal - app principal ID and pass that app client ID. And if you want to remove it, if you want to remove any web app, that expense app or some other third-party app like the DocuSign web app, you just run remove MSOL service principal and pass in that client ID. Okay, so I think we're nearing. So I wanted to talk about takeaways. Apps for Office, they provide contextual experiences for your users. So it lets them get their tasks done right inside Office. It's highly contextual. It's not like a random app that pops up. It runs along with the item. It runs side by side with the Word document, your Excel, whether it's a task pane app or a content app like that charting app that I showed you, or it's running in Outlook, where it's running when you're composing an email or you're reading an email. You can use Office 365 REST APIs, our services, to connect your existing mobile applications, your web applications, to connect them with the user's Office data. And that's important. We think that, like I was demoing with the expense application, the users expect some of their Office data to have access to their Office data, even if they're using your own expense mobile application or some other mobile application. So it's a scenario that you can really delight users with when they want to put things like reminders on their calendar or send mail or access their contacts. You can leverage both solutions. What I did is I took an app for an Office and I used the REST APIs and put it together. That's what I did in the expense app. Also in the campaign approval app, where I kicked off a campaign right inside Outlook. I was not forced to go into SharePoint and do it. I was mobile. I could do it in OVA. I could use it in the mobile OVA app on my iPhone. And so you can really use both these approaches to give you an end-to-end workflow where the users can start or finish their task either in Office, or they could start or finish their task in your custom mobile application or web. Right? So you can start either way. If that's an important business application, you can start in Office and finish it in your own mobile application, finish that workflow, whether it's approving an expense report or approving some campaign or something else. Or you could do the other way around. Office 2013, a lot of the things that I showed you, like those apps for Compose, they're available in Office 2013 SP1. We made so many improvements there. My colleagues gave talks on that, and I highly recommend you go and check it out. These talks will be recorded, and those recordings will be available for all of you to go and view it. There's a talk called Apps for Evolve my colleague has done, where he talks about how you can get some of those attachments, the body of the messages in detail. And then the REST APIs that we just announced, of course, that's public already. It's available in the cloud. If you're an Office 365 customer, you can start right now. And if you have Office 2013 SP1, you can do everything that I just showed you. And these are big improvements that we made. We'll continue to invest in this, and so I highly recommend you check it out. And that's all. I hope you found this useful. Thanks. So I'm going to be here for any Q&A. I've got time. I'm happy to stay as long as you want until my next session at 3:30. These are the sessions that I talked about. So.